The air was heavy with smoke. Not the kind from a chimney or a distant fire, but thick, choking smoke that signaled something terribly wrong. A volunteer firefighter, Chris, slammed his truck door shut as he ran toward the abandoned barn on the outskirts of town. Flames lit the night sky, casting an eerie glow on the scorched earth below. He wasn't supposed to be there, he was off duty. But something had pulled him there. A sound. A cry. Faint. Fragile. Desperate. A whimper. Not human. Chris pushed through the collapsing doorway, coughing hard, his eyes burning. His flashlight beam cut through the smoke, sweeping across burnt hay and charred beams. Then he saw it. Curled in the corner, hidden behind a broken trough, was a dog. Or what was left of one. Burned fur. Exposed skin. Legs twisted awkwardly beneath him. Eyes wide, but not with fear. No, it was something else. Pain, yes. But also hope. "Hey, buddy," Chris murmured, voice cracking. "I got you. I got you." The dog tried to lift its head, but collapsed with a soft whine. Chris didn't hesitate. He took off his jacket, wrapping the trembling body with gentle hands. The barn groaned behind him as beams buckled. He ran. That was the moment everything changed. Section 1. The Rescue. Chris laid the dog on the back seat, gently securing him with the jacket. "Hang on, buddy. Just hang on." His fingers trembled as he fumbled with the keys. Ash clung to his hair, his face streaked with soot and sweat. He drove faster than he ever had in his life. The nearest animal hospital was nearly 40 minutes away. But Chris didn't care. Every mile felt like a lifetime. Every time he looked in the rearview mirror and saw that fragile chest barely rising and falling, a knot tightened in his gut. Halfway there, the dog let out a sharp, broken yelp. "Stay with me," Chris shouted. "You're not going out like this. Not tonight." When he finally skidded to a stop outside the clinic, the staff rushed out, shocked at the sight. The vet, Dr. Morgan, didn't waste time. "Third-degree burns, multiple fractures," she said briskly, assessing the damage as they wheeled the stretcher inside. "He shouldn't be alive." Chris followed like a shadow, refusing to leave. He watched from the glass window as they worked on the dog, cleaning wounds, administering fluids, stitching what they could. There was so much damage, so much suffering. "Does he have a name?" one of the techs asked gently. Chris paused. "Not yet, but he's a fighter." He looked at the bloodied, broken body lying on the table. "I'll call him Phoenix." Days passed. Phoenix remained unconscious. Tubes fed him. Machines monitored him. His face was barely recognizable. Bandages covered most of his body. But somehow he clung to life. Chris came every day. He read aloud, told stories, held Phoenix's paw like it might keep him tethered to this world. And then, on the 5th day, Phoenix opened his eyes. The room was silent. Dr. Morgan stood frozen. "He's awake." Chris leaned in, tears welling. "Hey, Phoenix. You came back." The dog blinked slowly, weak but aware. He tried to move, just an inch, but it was enough. Enough to send a surge of hope through everyone in that room. "He's going to need months of care," Dr. Morgan said, her tone serious. "Skin grafts. Physical therapy. There's no guarantee." "There's me," Chris interrupted. "I'll do whatever it takes." From that moment on, it wasn't just a rescue. It was a mission. Phoenix's recovery was agonizing. Every day brought new battles. Infections. Fevers. Pain that made him howl through the night. But Chris never left. He slept on the clinic floor. Fed Phoenix by hand. Whispered words of comfort every time the tremors came. "Just hold on, boy. Please. Just hold on." And slowly, Phoenix responded. One day, he wagged his tail. The next, he licked Chris's hand. The first time he stood on his own, it lasted only 2 seconds. But Chris wept like a child. The staff began calling it a miracle. But to Chris, it wasn't magic. It was love. Relentless, patient, undying love. Still, there was one thing Chris couldn't forget. The fire. It wasn't accidental. Investigators found traces of accelerant. Someone had set that barn ablaze. And someone had left Phoenix to die in it. But who? And why? Chris made a silent promise. "You fought to live, Phoenix. Now I'll fight for justice." As Phoenix took his first real steps outside the clinic, scars still raw, body still fragile, Chris knew their story was far from over. Something darker was waiting, and the truth was buried in the ashes. / End of Section 1. Awaiting instruction for Section 2. Phoenix's recovery brought warmth into Chris's life he never knew he needed. But under the surface, questions burned just as hot as the flames that nearly ended it all. Who would do this? Who could look at a living being and set them on fire? Chris couldn't let it go. Not while Phoenix limped through therapy, each step leaving blood on the mats. Not while nightmares jolted Phoenix awake, barking and trembling. Chris had to find answers. Not just for justice, but for peace. Section 2. Digging into the ashes. It started with a visit to the barn's owner. Mr. Dalton, an older man with tired eyes and nicotine-stained fingers, lived just past the edge of town. You again? Dalton grumbled when Chris arrived. I need to know who had access to the barn. Dalton sighed. That place was abandoned years ago. Kids used to party there. Squatters, maybe. But no one had permission. Chris pushed harder. Was there anyone you had a problem with? Someone with a reason to hurt animals. Dalton looked down. You think this was about the dog? Chris didn't answer. He didn't need to. He could see the flicker in Dalton's eyes. The flash of guilt, or maybe fear. I heard rumors, Dalton finally muttered. Some boys locals. Troublemakers. Used to fight dogs for money. Sick stuff. Maybe they left one behind. Chris's blood ran cold. Dog fighting. Phoenix had been a victim before the fire. Back at the clinic, Chris sat beside Phoenix. He stroked the fur on his unburned ear, whispering as if the dog could confirm what he now suspected. Is that what happened to you, boy? They used you, hurt you, and when you weren't strong enough, they tried to erase you. Phoenix looked up, eyes soft but knowing. Chris swore then. They won't get away with it. He started his own search. Online groups. Local forums. He posted anonymously about the incident. And eventually someone responded. A message from a girl named Lila. I know who hurt that dog. I was there. Lila agreed to meet in a park outside town. She was no older than 17, her hands shaking as she held a coffee cup. They called him Sparky, she began. He was just a puppy when they got him. They trained him to fight. When he stopped winning, they got angry. Chris clenched his fists. Who are they? A group of older guys, she whispered. Led by someone named Travis. He runs fights outside the county. Pays kids to bring in strays. And the fire? They didn't want to feed him anymore. Travis poured gas on the floor. Lit it. Locked the door. Chris felt sick. You have to report this. Lila shook her head. He threatened my brother. Said he'd do worse if we talked. Chris looked into her eyes. I'll protect you. Phoenix deserves justice. And so do you. With Lila's help, Chris went to the police. The case reopened and soon arrests were made. Travis and 3 others were taken into custody. Charges: illegal dog fighting, animal cruelty, arson with intent to destroy life. The town was shocked. People who'd turned a blind eye now wept in guilt. Chris brought Phoenix to the hearing. The courtroom fell silent as the scarred dog limped down the aisle. Even the judge wiped away a tear. Let this image remind us, she said, that cruelty hides in silence, and courage shines through suffering. Travis was sentenced to 12 years in prison. Others followed. The ring was dismantled. Phoenix never returned to who he was. But in many ways, he became something more. He became a symbol. Chris adopted him officially. Their home, once silent, now echoed with healing sounds. Phoenix's slow tail wags, his cautious steps, and eventually his joyful barks. They visited schools, shelters, and recovery centers. Chris told their story. Of fire, of pain, and of choosing love anyway. People cried. They hugged Phoenix. They learned. They changed. One day, Chris sat on the porch as the sun dipped low. Phoenix lay beside him, now older, his gray muzzle resting on Chris's boot. You did it, buddy, Chris whispered. You came out of the fire, and you showed us how to love better. Phoenix wagged his tail. Just once. But that was enough. End of story.